My half-sister tricked me into swapping wedding sedan chairs. She married the top scholar while I was sent to be a stepmother when we met again. She was pregnant with child, and I was locked in a bitter quarrel with my stepson. As I looked at her sneering triumphantly, I smiled too. The disaster you thought you'd passed on, little did you know about someone was secretly going with the flow. Get out. I don't want you as my mother. The moment I stepped out of the sedan chair, a rotten egg hurtled toward my face. I froze for a second. Feeling the sticky slime dripping down my red veil, I reached up to yank it off immediately, but my maid Chun-Kyun stopped me. Miss, that's against tradition, only your husband can remove the veil. I fell silent for a moment, then suddenly pushed her away and tore off the veil blocking my view. Pointing at the red cloth soaked in putrid slime on the ground, I scoffed. Do you expect me to wear this thing all night waiting in the bridal chamber? Is there something you don't want me to see without the veil? I dare not. Miss Chun-Kyun dropped to her knees with a thud. The boy who'd thrown the egg leaned in, staring at my face intently. He frowned in confusion. You're not Emma? I glanced at him, then at the plaque hanging above the mansion gate at Red General's residence. I'm Emma's younger sister. Olivia, may I ask if this is the General's residence? The boy ignored my question, a malicious grin spreading across his face. You fools. You carried the wrong bride. The wedding's off. I'm going to tell father. I'll have all you idiots thrown out. Chun-Kyun glared at the boy's retreating figure, a flash of anger in her eyes. Just as she was about to stand, I pressed my hand firmly on her shoulder. The movement made her tremble. Chun-Kyun. If I'm not mistaken, the General's residence was supposed to be my sister's destination. My sedan chair was bound for the top scholar's mansion. I can try to. How would I know? I let out a cold laugh and glanced at the wedding procession, all of whom were now trembling with fear. I'll get to the bottom of this later. Hurry and send word to my father and Anderson. Split up to make it fast. Or. Everyone nodded frantically, but their movements were painfully slow. I quickly pieced things together. Moments later, heavy, rhythmic footsteps approached. Chinks, you've brought the wrong person. Why not hurry and send her back? The impatient voice trailed off abruptly. I turned my head, and our eyes met those of the mansion's master, Ethan. His gaze lingered on me, stunned, a hint of admiration flickering in his eyes. I studied him closely. Ethan was over 10 years older than me. Though it was his wedding day, he'd clearly just returned from somewhere, still clad in blood-stained armor, exuding a fierce aura. To be honest, given a choice, I'd never want to be with someone like him. Father, hurry, doctor her away, doctor her away. The boy rushed over, shaking Ethan's leg. This must be Liam, Ethan's only son. Ethan muttered a perfunctory response, his gaze returning to me. I offered him a soft smile. He took a few steps closer, his eyes burning with intensity. You're Thompson's fourth daughter, Olivia? I was about to bow and answer when a servant came running in a panic. General, messengers from the top scholar's mansion have arrived. Ethan's eyes darkened, the warmth in them fading. Since they sent someone, let's swap the brides back before the auspicious hour passes. I sighed silently. I doubted we'd be swapping anything back. The top scholar's mansion was no closer than the General's residence. Logically, my half-sister and I should have boarded our sedans around the same time. For them to send messengers so quickly meant only one thing. They'd been prepared. Sure enough, the servant hesitated. General. Their men said the groom and bride have already entered the bridal chamber. It was too late to change things now. Why not let fate take its course? Perhaps this is a case of the wrong sedan chair leading to the right marriage. Ridiculous. Ethan's brows furrowed. The marriage agreed upon by our ancestors. How can you treat it like a joke? Noah writes beautiful essays, but is he really so muddle-headed? He turned to me, his tone uncertain. Miss Olivia, what do you think? I brushed a tear from the corner of my eye, putting on a helpless, fragile act. I'm just a humble daughter. I'll obey my family's arrangements. I've already sent the wedding procession to inform my parents. They should be here by now. Before I could finish, Liam scoffed. What bad luck, you Thompsons have wasted so much of our time. I'm starving. I pulled a red packet of wedding cakes from my bosom, unfolded it gently, and held it out to Liam in a soft voice. My grandmother was worried I'd get hungry waiting in the bridal chamber, so she prepared these for me. Young master, if you don't mind, please take them to tide you over. Liam's eyes widened in surprise. And Ethan's face showed a hint of approval, but in the next instant, Liam's expression turned arrogant again. He swung his hand violently, knocking the cakes from my grasp to the ground. Who wants to eat this dirty stuff? Get lost! He shouted and ran off. Tanner. Ethan was clearly angered. He was about to chase after Liam to scold him when another servant arrived. General. Word from the Thompsons. What did they say? They also want us to let fate take its course. And they said. The servant glanced at me nervously. They also said that if it weren't for this mistake, a good marriage like the general's residence would never have fallen to a concubine's daughter. Ethan was stunned. How is this a good marriage? Any family in the capital that truly cares for their daughter would never marry her to me. His eyes filled with sympathy as he looked at me. Miss Olivia, if you have any thoughts, speak freely. Ethan, will never force you. I feigned dizziness. Stumbling slightly just as I was about to fall, Ethan reached out and caught me in his arms. Our bodies pressed together, sharing each other's warmth. I looked up at him, my eyes brimming with tears. General, I am a general. You are brave and heroic. I know my status isn't worthy of you, but after today's incident, if I'm sent back home, I'll be mocked by the entire capital, never to find a good marriage again. If you don't dislike me, I'm willing to stay with you. I half closed my eyes, my cheeks flushing. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed. Suddenly, he lifted me a possessive lie and strode toward the guest chambers. A maid ventured to ask, General, should Miss Olivia be welcomed as your legal wife? Ethan's voice was deep. From this day forth, Olivia is the mistress of the general's residence. With that he kicked the door shut. As the door slammed closed, I caught a faint, cunning smile on Chun Kyuan's lips. After a reckless night, Ethan had to rise early to inspect the military training grounds. In my drowsiness, I heard him whisper, don't disturb her, let her sleep as long as she likes. A subtle feeling stirred in my heart. Once I heard him leave the mansion, I got up immediately. The maid attending to my morning toilet was Xiao Cui, a quick worker with a chatterbox mouth. Madam, those maids who came with you are so lazy. That Chun Kyuan is supposed to be your personal maid. But on such an important day, she's not the least bit attentive. She's still asleep. I smiled faintly, saying nothing. But Xiao Cui grew even more indignant on my behalf. Ethan's parents had passed away when he was young, so I had no parents-in-law to serve. He was busy from dawn till dusk every day, entrusting me with full responsibility for managing the mansion's affairs. Within a month, I'd seized complete control of the general's residence. Except for Liam, who remained unruly, everyone in the mansion obeyed my orders. Ethan was surprised by how well I handled things. I smiled to myself. The general's residence was small after all. Even the scheming of a few pretty maids was trivial compared to the infighting in the Thompson household. Not to mention, I'd endured far crueler power struggles in my previous life. I woke up screaming from a nightmare. My half-sister had been betrothed to Ethan since childhood, but when Ethan went to war with his father as a young man and returned to the capital over a decade later to be fed, he brought back a child. Rumors spread in the capital that the boy was Ethan's illegitimate son with a camp follower. My half-sister was disgusted by the thought of being a stepmother to a camp follower's child, but Ethan's official position was now higher than my father's. Even though my father and stepmother doted on her, they didn't dare to break off the engagement. That's why they'd hatched this plan to swap the sedan chairs. My half-sister had long been having an affair with the top scholar, Noah. His family was poor compared to me. He was desperate to marry a legitimate daughter of the Thompson family. In my nightmare, I discovered the sedan chair swap early in my previous life. I'd kicked up a fuss and insisted on swapping back, so I'd never understood Noah's sudden hatred for me. All I knew was that starting from the second day, he'd kept taking concubines. I'd been trapped in endless harem struggles, transforming from an innocent girl into a resentful woman confined to the inner chambers. Just when I thought my suffering was over, when I discovered I was pregnant and finally had something to live for, I'd gone to Noah's villa in the woods to surprise him. Instead, I'd found him and my half-sister embracing. Dazed, I panicked and tried to flee, accidentally stepping on a branch and making a noise. They'd snapped out of their trance and spotted me. My half-sister had screamed in terror, Noah, we can't let Ethan find out about us. Then Noah had stabbed me in the stomach with his sword. 2 lives lost in one stroke. After waking from the nightmare, my first thought was to break off my engagement with Anderson. But my father and stepmother had refused, calling me ungrateful. Even my grandmother, who'd always been closest to me, had tried to persuade me. I comforted myself, what if it was just a dream? What if the horrors I feared wouldn't come true? But one by one, the events of my previous life had started to repeat themselves. My half-sister had insisted on marrying on the same day as me. She de-offed and whispered secretly with my personal maid Chen Qin. When Noah visited the Thompsons, he and my half-sister had exchanged lingering glances. Had finally been convinced it hadn't been a nightmare. It had been my terrible past life. Since I couldn't escape the fate of marriage, this time, I decided to go with the flow. I'd let them have their way. In my previous life, my half-sister had never been happy after marrying Ethan. She fought constantly with Liam. But I'd wanted to see. No matter how unhappy it got, could it be worse than I with my unborn child? And what about my half-sister and Noah? This pair of lovers? Now that no one stood in their way, how far would they go? As I pondered these thoughts, a commotion erupted outside. It sounded like Liam was climbing a tree to catch birds again. I sighed and walked out, calling up to him. Liam, have you finished your lessons today? Liam shouted down impatiently, it's none of your business. You're right. It's not, but when your father comes back to check your homework tonight, you'll be the one getting spanked. Not me. You're so annoying, I just hate studying. You must be bad at your lessons too. Otherwise, why would your father dislike you so much? Shall see you. I looked alarmed and tried to intervene. Young master, you mustn't speak to madam like that. Why not? In this mansion, father is the boss. And I'm second. Who does she think she is? Shall see you. I glanced at me nervously. Madam, children speak without thinking. Please don't take it to heart, it's fine. I smiled faintly. He's not entirely wrong, but I wasn't sure if Liam had just been spouting insults or if he'd sensed something from the Thompsons' attitude during the sedan chair mix-up. My father did hate me. Among all his concubines' daughters, I was the one he looked down on the most. My mother had been my grandmother's maid. My father had forced himself on her while drunk. After I was born, he'd refused to acknowledge me, even accusing my mother of having an affair. Desperate, my mother had drowned herself in a well. Only then had my grandmother stepped in angrily, taking me in and raising me as her own. So when my half-sister had refused to marry into the general's residence and become a stepmother, my father had naturally been the first to plot against me. He'd cared nothing about the fact that I wasn't of marriageable age yet. He cared nothing about the more than 10-year age gap between Ethan and me. Who does she think she is? I'd like to ask. Who do you think you are, second in command of the general's residence? Ethan's voice suddenly came from behind, jolting me out of my memories. Father. Liam climbed down from the tree sheepishly. After a few sharp words of scolding, the boy pouted and retreated to his room to do his homework. I reached out to take the heavy cloak Ethan was removing, but he suddenly lifted me into his arms and strode toward our bedroom. The maid's laughter echoed behind us. After a split-second of panic, I quickly wrapped my arms around his neck, putting on a docile, compliant look. Ethan was always busy with military affairs. Over 30. With a child already. Never in my wildest dreams had I thought he'd be so vigorous still. It was for the best. I had to seize this moment before he grew tired of me. In the heat of the moment, I nestled close to Ethan's ear, my voice soft and sweet. General, according to tradition, the daughter must return to her maiden home with her husband after marriage. I wonder if you have any free time these days? Ethan fell silent, his eyes fixed on me. Given his current status, it was only natural that he'd be reluctant to deal with such empty formalities at the Thompsons. In my previous life, Ethan had never accompanied my half-sister on her return visit. I kept smiling, but my mind raced with backup plans. Suddenly, a warm touch landed on my forehead. Ethan pulled back after planting a kiss there. You're right. I neglected that. Let us not trouble ourselves today. Tomorrow morning, have the mansion prepare gifts. Tiana and I will go with you. I thanked her repeatedly after Ethan fell asleep. I touched my forehead, my heart suddenly skipping a beat. Late, but intense. The next day, as we arrived at the Thompson residence, whether by coincidence or because they'd heard word in advance, My half-sister and Noah were there too, chatting warmly with my parents in the main hall. When they noticed Ethan and Liam entering, my father quickly stood up and ordered a servant to bring 2 wooden chairs. Liam glanced around the room curiously. Mother, why aren't they bringing you a chair to sit on? The hall fell instantly silent. I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Liam had called me mother for the first time. And it had to be in this awkward situation. Why no chair for me? Because my father was used to ignoring his concubine's daughter. Of course. Liam's question jolted him awake. After all, I was now the general's wife. He hurried to correct himself. Bring 3 chairs. The 3 of us finally took our seats. My half-sister's eyes flickered as she caressed her slightly swollen belly. Sister Olivia, it must be so comforting to have a son. I hope this child of mine will also be a filial son who honors his parents. Her words were clearly a dig. Liam wasn't my biological child, and I was merely a stepmother. I was about to retort with a sarcastic remark. But Liam spoke up before I could. Huh? Does that mean daughters aren't filial? Did you come to this conclusion because you weren't a filial daughter yourself? My half-sister's face turned icy. Noah slammed his fist on the table, angered. Young master. Watch your words. I suppose the esteemed general's residence values martial arts over teaching proper etiquette to young men. Ma is your aunt, how dare you speak to her like that? Liam pouted. Ethan sipped his tea with a faint smile. Now Noah lectures my son on etiquette. On your wedding day. I don't think you even bothered with the marriage ceremony before consummating the union. Where was your sense of etiquette then? Noah was left tongue-tied. Liam chimed in. Snickering. Uncle, are your eyes not working well? My mother is much prettier than aunt. How could you mix up your bride on your wedding night? Oh, was it intentional? My half-sister trembled with rage. It was likely the first time she'd been spoken to like this in her own home. My stepmother quickly nudged my father, urging him to intervene. Just as he was about to speak, Ethan cut in. I've heard that father-in-law is a tea lover. His Majesty bestowed some pre-arranged dragon well tea upon me a few days ago. I had some included in today's gifts. I hope father-in-law won't mind. How could I mind? Thank you, General. My father dared not say another word at that moment. A servant entered. Old Madam is here. The awkward tension in the room finally eased. My half-sister seemed to regain her composure. I'm relieved to see how well you and the General get along, sister. But you must be more careful in the future. The General is quite carefree. Who knows when he might bring home another son by a dancer or a maid. Oh, my memory. I forgot you the daughter of a maid yourself. Aunt, you should worry about yourself instead. Who knows when Uncle might bring home a son by his childhood sweetheart. Before your wedding, I saw Uncle arguing with a woman on the street. She kept saying she was his childhood sweetheart from the countryside. My half-sisters fell as she glared at Noah. He hurried to explain. Mumwa, she was just a neighbor from my hometown. Ethan sneered. A neighbor? I've heard you were once betrothed to her. My half-sister clenched her fists, about to press further when my grandmother appeared at the door. As everyone stood to greet her, grandmother suddenly waved me over. Olivia, come here. I forgot to give you some of your dowry. I followed grandmother out of the hall, hearing my half-sister's indignant voice behind us. Grandmother always gives Olivia all the good things. How could she forget that I'm the legitimate daughter of the Thompsons? Grandmother turned to me with a helpless smile, gesturing for me not to take it to heart. We walked to the pavilion in the backyard. She pulled a phoenix pattern gold bracelet from her sleeve and held it out to me. Olivia, how are you faring at the General's residence? Have you been wronged? Everything is fine. Ethan treats me very thoughtfully. Liam is a bit lively, but he's not truly unruly. Grandmother, this bracelet was a gift from the Empress Dowager. The dowry you gave me was already more generous than my sister's. I really shouldn't accept this. But grandmother insisted on putting it on my wrist. I sighed. Grandmother, you knew about the sedan chair swap, didn't you? Regret clouded grandmother's face. Olivia, don't blame me. I had to think about the Thompsons' interests. I smiled. How could I blame you, grandmother? They're the only one in the Thompsons who's ever been kind to me no matter what. I'll repay you and honor you in the future. But I'm also the mistress of the General's residence now. From now on, I'll naturally prioritize the general's residence over the Thompsons. Grandmother stared at me for a long time, then sighed. I knew our grandmother-granddaughter bond had begun to fade the moment I married and left home in my previous life. Trapped in the misery at Anderson's inner chambers, I'd begged grandmother countless times to persuade father to let me divorce. But she'd always told me to put the family's interests first. I knew she pitied me, that she sympathized with me, but in the heart of this family's matriarch, the Thompsons' dignity and reputation would always matter more than me. After speaking with grandmother, I planned to fetch Ethan and Liam and leave, but my half-sister blocked our path first. She stared at the gold bracelet on my wrist, hatred in her eyes. Grandmother actually gave you this bracelet? Olivia, don't be too complacent. It can't be easy being a stepmother, especially to a lowly camp follower's son like Liam. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a small figure hiding in the shadows. I smiled. As the daughter of a maid, being a stepmother to a camp follower's son suits me perfectly. Doesn't it? A person's worth is never determined by their blood. Liam may have a childish temper, but like his father, he's bold, responsible, and stands up for what's right even if I never have children of my own. Having such a fine young man call me mother is enough for me. My half-sister was lost for words. I pressed on, sowing discord. Sister, you should worry about yourself instead. Who knows when uncle might bring home a son by his childhood sweetheart. Before your wedding, I saw uncle arguing with a woman on the street. She kept saying she was his childhood sweetheart from the countryside. My half-sister's face paled. She didn't even bother to retort, turning on her heel and storming off. I smiled faintly. On the carriage back to the general's residence, Liam stole glances at me repeatedly. When I asked what was wrong, he pulled a handful of candies from his pocket. These were really tasty of the Thompsons, eh? I begged them for a whole bunch. You can have some too. Mother. Ethan watched the scene. A look of relief in his eyes. He moved closer to me, reaching for my hand. But I turned my face away, avoiding his touche, then froze, exchanging a confused glance with Liam. For the rest of the journey, I continued chatting and laughing with Liam, but ignored Ethan completely. When we reached the mansion, Ethan got off first and held out his hand to help me. Again, I ignored him and walked inside alone. Behind me, I heard the father and son whispering. Father, what did you do to make mother angry? I have no idea. After dinner, I went to the study alone. A while later, there was a soft knock on the door. Mother, it's me. Liam, what's wrong? Liam entered, approaching cautiously. To my surprise, he apologized. Mother, I've been thinking. I was deliberately misbehaving before because I read in storybooks that stepmothers are all terrible, but you're nothing like the stepmothers in the books. I'll never be naughty in front of you again. I'll study hard and make progress. I patted his head, smiling. Good boy. But my eyes remained melancholy. Liam noticed immediately. Asking again what was wrong, I fell silent for a moment, then confessed. Ever since we came back from the Thompsons, I've been thinking about what they said. It really hurt my feelings. Liam bit his lip for a moment, then suddenly said, Mother, then you should have another baby with father, one that's yours. That way, you won't be sad anymore. I won't mind at all. I was shocked. You silly child. I was thinking that having too many children isn't a good thing. Look at me and Emma, we're always fighting. And so are all the other siblings. One lively child like you is enough for the general's residence. I don't have the energy to take care of any more. Liam looked embarrassed. Oh, but I still really want a little brother or sister. I'm older now. I won't misbehave anymore. Let them be the naughty ones. I'll help you discipline them. His words made me laugh. Just then, Ethan entered the room. I thought you were upset about something serious. Turns out it's this. He waved Liam away, sitting down beside me and taking my hand. Olivia, the general's residence is nothing like the Thompsons. And I'm confident that I'll be a better father than yours ever was. How children grow up depends more on how their parents raise them. Don't worry. I'll make sure all our children grow up to be upright people. Ethan's eyes were full of sincerity. I couldn't help but squeeze his hand in return. He leaned close to my ear, his voice low and husky. Then, to make Liam's dream come true soon, shouldn't we start trying? My cheeks flushed bright red as I nodded gently. That night, Looking at Ethan sleeping soundly beside me, I smiled to myself. Did I really not want a biological child of my own? Of course I did. A little feigned withdrawal had earned me the remorse of both father and son and their promise to share the burden of raising our children. It was worth it. A few days later, I took Liam out shopping from a distance. I saw my half-sister, her belly swollen. Her face haggard and exhausted. She spotted me too. Her eyes filled with anger as if she wanted to rush over and say something, but Liam immediately stepped in front of me. Shielding me, my half-sister glared at me resentfully, then gritted her teeth and walked away. When we returned to the mansion, Liam immediately told everyone what had happened. Ethan frowned. Noah has been quite restless lately. Besides his childhood sweetheart, it seems he's involved with several other mistresses. Emma got pregnant as soon as she married him, and Noah is clearly not one to stay idle. Liam immediately warned. Father, you mustn't be like him, sneaking around after mother gets pregnant. What do you take me for? In the future, you should follow my example when it comes to relationships. Understand? Father and son started roughhousing again. Back in my room, as Shall see you, I combed my hair. She whispered, Madam, you're so clever. Having me send people to stir up trouble among Noah's mistresses really worked. I smiled. It wasn't cleverness, just lessons learned the hard way. In my previous life, Noah was inherently promiscuous. In my past life, he'd used not marrying the woman he loved as an excuse to take countless concubines. And my half-sister had actually believed him, carrying on an affair with him repeatedly. Because he hadn't married his true love, he could marry 10 or 100 others? What a fool to believe that. Shall see you. I lowered her voice even more. Madam, I only dare tell you this secretly. The general was quite romantic in the military back in the day. He has naturally infatuated with you now that you've just married in. But sooner or later, he'll take concubines too. You must be on your guard. I laughed. I don't care if he takes concubines, visits brothels, or does anything else so long as I hold the power to manage the mansion. Shall see you. I remember this. A man's love is unreliable. Money and power are the only things a woman can truly depend on for a lifetime. Shall see you. I nodded, looking confused. You're surprisingly generous. Ethan's cold voice suddenly rang out. Shall see you. I paled with fright. I waved her away and faced Ethan directly. Every word I said was true. Olivia, don't crave eternal love. Only mutual respect with the general, as long as you let me stay firmly in my position as the mistress of the general's residence. I won't interfere with your affairs. I said. Ethan sneered. Very well, since you've said so. I'll go seek some amusement. He turned to leave, but halfway there, he glanced back at me. Who are you putting on that unhappy face for? I touched the corner of my mouth instinctively. Sure enough, it was downturned. Ethan smiled, lifting me onto the couch. I squirmed uncomfortably. I really don't believe in lifelong love. But I do, Olivia. Why don't we bet our entire lives to see who wins in the end? After a night of intimacy, Ethan stroked my belly gently. I sighed. Stroking won't make a baby, it's up to fate. I know. He continued caressing for a moment, then leaned close to my ear. Olivia, Liam isn't actually my son. Back in the military, a comrade of mine fell in love with a foreign slave girl after he died in battle. She followed him in death, leaving behind Liam, who'd just been born. I was afraid his background would invite gossip, so I kept it a secret. My eyes widened in shock. Thanks to our efforts, 3 months later, the doctor confirmed I was pregnant. Liam was overjoyed, immediately dragging Ethan and me to a restaurant to celebrate, but on the way, we witnessed the absurd scene. My half-sister, wielding a bamboo pole, chased a woman down the street, beating her relentlessly. Seductive whore. How dare you seduce my husband? You're from a decent family. Have you no shame? I quickly covered Liam's ears. A crowd had gathered to watch. Ethan pulled me back, shaking his head to signal I shouldn't meddle. Once we were in the restaurant, I looked down from the window and saw Noah hurry over to drag my half-sister away, putting an end to the spectacle. But my brows furrowed deeper. If I wasn't mistaken, her belly was flat. How could that be? She should have been 6 or 7 months pregnant by then. Seeing my confusion, Ethan finally sighed. I wanted to keep it from you, afraid it would worry you. Last month, your sister caught Noah cheating with a woman at his villa in the woods. During their scuffle, she lost the baby. A jumble of emotions washed over me suddenly. I remembered the pain of being stabbed through the stomach in my previous life, losing both myself and my unborn child. My hands and feet went cold. Ethan warmed my hands, urging me not to overthink or interfere. I looked down at my slightly swollen belly and let out a long sigh. That night, my carriage stopped at a quiet street corner. After a while, the curtain was pulled back, and my half-sister sat in, her face cold. "Olivia, what are you up to? Sneaking around to meet me like this?" I pulled an envelope stuffed with silver notes from my bosom and held it out. "I heard you went back to the Thompsons a few days ago to ask for money, that they refused?" Anger flashed in her eyes. "What? Come to laugh at me, Olivia? You're living the high life now, the general dotes on you. Your stepson listens to you, and you're pregnant. But you only have this good life because I swapped the sedan chairs. Otherwise, that terrible marriage to Noah would have been yours." As she spoke, her eyes turned red. If I'd known this would happen, I would have rather been a stepmother. At least I wouldn't have lost my child. I sneered coldly. People have different personalities. If you'd chosen to be a stepmother, you wouldn't have my good fortune today. It might have been another miserable marriage. In my previous life, my half-sister hadn't been happy after marrying Ethan either. He slept in the military camp every night, later bringing Liam to live with them and taking to concubines, never returning to the general's residence. And my half-sister had used those absences to carry on her affair with Noah, thinking about everything from past and present. I sighed, shaking the envelope in my hand. "Take it or leave it." She snatched it away. Gritting her teeth, I smiled. "Meh, do you know why father and mother wouldn't even spare a few hundred tiles for you?" Ma froze, shaking her head in confusion. "Because they've been busy preparing betrothal gifts for second brother and buying an official position for third brother. Money is tight everywhere. No matter how much they dote on you. Do they dote on you more than our elder and younger brothers? You're always comparing yourself to his concubines' daughters. Why not fight for what you deserve against those concubines' sons? Yes. Compared to us, you're their precious daughter. But in front of the male heirs, what are you? Have you ever truly seen your place in the family? You're tormented by Noah, crying every day to divorce him. Have father and mother ever treated you kindly? Now, because of their neglect, Noah looks down on you more and more, doesn't he?" Lou's face darkened and lightened alternately as she fell into silence. No one else knew about my conversation with Emma. After that day, people in the capital noticed a change in the top scholar's wife. She became gentle and humble, even actively helping her husband find concubines. For a time, the couple actually seemed to have restored the harmony of their newlywed days. But just as the top scholar's wife's life seemed to be improving, the top scholar suddenly fell gravely ill. Sweating profusely day and night, with aching waist and weak legs, unable to get out of bed, gossips in the capital whispered that Noah had ruined his health through excessive debauchery. Mo stayed by his side day and night, personally boiling medicine and feeding him. She even knelt and kowtowed 3 times 9 steps of the temple every day, donating large sums of money as incense offerings. Her reputation as a virtuous wife quickly spread throughout the capital. Unfortunately, not long after, Noah passed away. On the day of his funeral, Emma cried so hard she fainted, nearly throwing herself at the coffin. When the Empress heard of this, she was deeply moved and sympathetic, bestowing upon Emma a noble title. Ethan told me the news. My due date was drawing near, and I rarely went out anymore as he applied essential oil to my belly. Chatting casually about the matter, he suddenly asked, "If you were in Emma's position, what would you have done?" I told him the truth. I couldn't have done it as well as her. I'm much stupider than she is. But Ethan smiled. "That's only because you didn't have a kind sister to guide you." I froze, meeting his knowing, smiling gaze. Only then did I realize that none of my private meetings with Emma had escaped the notice of this great general. Later, I heard that Emma still visited the Thompsons occasionally until father and mother began hinting openly that they hoped their noble daughter would help her brothers more. After that, Emma rarely went back. One day, I went to visit grandmother with gifts and heard her sighing that Emma was now unfilial. I didn't know how to respond soon after. Ma left the capital. The last I heard of her was a letter she sent, saying she planned to settle in Jiangnan and start a small business. I wrote back, wishing her all the best on the day our daughter was born. The entire general's residence was filled with joy. Liam competed with the wet nurses to hold his baby sister. Huffing out his chest, he assured me with bright eyes that he was growing up and would study hard and practice martial arts to set a good example for her. Ethan and I exchanged smiles. This little rascal was finally showing the responsibility of an elder brother. With a new young lady in the mansion, Ethan arranged for new maids and servants to be hired. One day, I heard Xiao Cui instructing the new arrivals. The most important thing for a servant is loyalty. Next is being quick and efficient. And never gossip otherwise. A young girl asked curiously, otherwise what? Xiao Cui put on a stern face, otherwise. Madame will feed you to the tigers. The young girls were terrified. And Xiao Cui laughed, admitting she was teasing them. Our madam is wonderful. She's definitely the best madam in the entire capital. I laughed to Xiao Cui. I had taken the casual words I'd said to her and used them to scare others. But I hadn't been teasing her. Chen Qin and the others who betrayed me had all met terrible fates. But these trivial matters weren't worth telling such a naive girl like Xiao Cui. The next spring, I held our daughter in my arms as our family of for Ethan, Liam, our daughter, and I went to Lingshan Temple to pray for blessings. As we walked under the locust tree covered with red wish cloths, Ethan suddenly turned to me. Olivia, do you remember the day we first met? Before I could answer, Liam chimed in. I remember, father. You stared at mother like a fool. I secretly looked down on you back then. You had such a reputation for not being interested in women and military. Ethan tapped him on the forehead. I wasn't drawn to your mother's looks. A few months before our wedding, I came to Lingshan Temple to pray for His Majesty. As I passed this locust tree, a red cloth fell down. I picked it up and saw a small painting of a woman. As he spoke, he glanced at me awkwardly. I gasped, was there also a line written on the red cloth? I wish your heart was like mine, never betraying our mutual love? Ethan nodded eagerly, yes. Could that red cloth really have been yours? When I saw you that day, I thought you looked familiar, but I dismissed it as a coincidence. My face turned red. It was mine. Before the wedding, I came here to pray for a marriage where my husband and I would truly understand each other. Then your wish came true. Ethan smiled. After picking it up, I hung the red cloth back up. It might still be on the tree now. Liam's eyes lit up. He insisted on climbing the tree to find the red cloth, and to my surprise, Ethan joined him, father and son clambering up the tree, searching foolishly. I smiled, looking down to tease our daughter in my arms. Actually, there aren't that many coincidences in the world, are there? Baby? The swaddled infant, of course, had no idea what I was saying. That year, after confirming I would marry Ethan, I'd waited at Lingshan Temple early, relying on memories from my previous life. As Ethan passed the locust tree, I'd let the red cloth drift down with the wind. I'd watched him pick it up, watched him marvel at the woman in the painting. When he discovered that the bride who arrived by mistake was the very woman in the painting, how could he not believe it was a match made in heaven? Life is full of disappointments. 9 out of 10 things don't go as we wish. But with careful planning, we can always make up for 6 or 7 of them. After all, in this life, I was happy.